Okay, next speaker is about dog attacks in Townsville. So a glance at exposure and prevention from Courtney Heath from the James Cook University, Queensland. Courtney is undertaking a Masters of Public Health and Tropical Medicine at James Cook, having received her Bachelor of Science in Public Health with an emphasis on environmental health in 2010 from the Northern Illinois University. The project, this project, exploring dog attacks, is part of her ongoing studies. So the court case, now we've got a dog attack, I think it's going to lead in beautifully. So Courtney will be presenting on behalf of a team of co-authors, including Associate Professor Richard Franklin from James Cook University, and Mr. Michael Smith, President of the Australian Institute of Animal Management. So please welcome Courtney.
Hello, like you said, my name is Courtney Heath. Thank you for having me today. I'm just going to be showing some preliminary results we found from this unique experience we've had with some data sets that Michael so kindly gave to us, and those were some registration forms and some overall dog attack incidences. So a quick overview, I'll go through some background on dog attacks and look at state and national data around that and discuss some public health concerns. And on the flip side, I'll discuss some benefits of dogs and dog ownership. And I'll briefly discuss the Townsville City Council's current control methods and monitoring strategies. But I would like to focus on the results that we have found from this data set. And those, again, were from the registered dogs and from the aggression incident reports. So first, some background. Some reports say that about 12 to 14,000 Australians are seeking treatment annually from dog-related injuries. These can range from bruises to fractures. And the results of these injuries are highly dependent on either the dog size or the dog's aggression, and even the size of the human can be an influence. 1,400 of these do require hospitalizations, but we also know this is a gross underestimate of the actual issue, as about 50% of the incidences will never be reported. To answer the question, why do they occur? Some of the big points are owner negligence, usually in neglecting to socialize properly, training them, and not having proper control. Also, the temperament and some environmental elements can affect the dog attacks from occurring. I also like to emphasize the importance of understanding risk and trends, and like most public health issues, these give a good understanding of where to implement some prevention strategies in order to decrease the prevalence. And Townsville City Council has recently implemented the Animal Management Plan for 2014-2017, which was established to focus on issues such as improving animal management, such as services for compliance and education of ownership and behavior. Some more background, we were able to look at some 2011 survey data for Queensland, and we saw that there was about 1.23 dog attacks per 100,000 people. And we were able to get a nice overview and a profile of dog owners. And we saw that females were more likely than males to own dogs in between the ages of 45 and 54. And also, if you lived in a rural setting, you were more likely to own a dog. And we also got to see some characteristics of bite incidences, such as the leg and foot was the most affected, being in another person's house or yard. The dogs were usually unknown, and adult males were the most affected. And so this is just an overview of the state issue that we can then compare to Townsville and see kind of how we match up. So some of the public health concerns for dog attacks come from medical costs. In 2001, Australian communities estimated about $7 million go towards public hospitals, which doesn't even include some of the other medical treatments sought or the psychological costs that a dog attack can have. Luckily for Australia, death is rare from a dog attack, and from 2009 to 2011, there was only about 11 deaths, and going back another 30 years, there was about 33 deaths, which was just over 1 per year. And when living with dogs and other animals, there's always issues and concern for zoonotic diseases. Luckily, again, Australia doesn't have rabies in their dog population yet, but there are a lot of countries that are endemic that are very close to Australia. So without constant surveillance, this could become an issue for Australia. And there is an overall underestimate of reporting, as I mentioned. There are separate reporting systems that include either police stations, hospitals, and in some instances, these towns, or like Townsville, they have councils to record it. But there is a lack of collaboration between these systems, so it's hard to get a glimpse of the actual issue at hand. But on a lighter note, there are various benefits to dogs and dog ownership, such as we've been using them for drug sniffing, bomb sniffing in the armed services, and for police stations and airports. They have been used for assisting those who need greater independence, such as seeing eye dogs. They can be used on farms, and they've been shown to have an increase in overall health and well-being for the owner. They can increase social development in children and decrease stress. And for a lot of people, they are just a good companion to have and often become just another part of the family. So there are a lot of positive interactions with dogs. However, there are some negative which turn into dog attacks. So Townsville City Council has several policies and programs in place to help control and monitor the amount of dogs and instances of attacks. Their first step and goal is to register all the animals in town. They get basic information on the dog owner, if it's desexed, microchip numbers, and it is a good first step to see the whole population. And the second step is this relatively new Universal Aggression Incident Reporting Form, which is a standardized and mandatory form that is a key step in understanding trends, and when used properly is a good tool to have, as it collects specific details around instances, such as the attacking dog's information, those injured, etc. And so we were lucky that Townsville City had started this collection, and we were able to look at it and try to get see some trends. And again, it is just a few years of information, so it is like I said, a quick glance at the issue. So we first had the registration details, and we looked at all those that were registered this year up until the end of June of next year. And we also had the aggression incident reports, and we wanted a good 2 years, so we looked at the financial years. So starting from July 2013 until June of this year were the incidences we looked at. There were some limitations, such as reporting issues. A lot of the questions on the form were opinion-based, and so they were up for interpretation. Some were secondhand information, which may not always be 100% accurate. Again, 2 years of data isn't a lot to see huge trends, but we like to think that this is kind of scratching the surface of the issue. And hopefully down the road, 5-10 years from now, we can see even more trends and get a bit better idea of the issue at hand. And also some of the fields had a lot of missing data, either blank or just unknown. So it kind of affected some of the results. And I'm not from Townsville, so I put up a quick map for those who aren't. And we see there's a population of over 192,000, and we found 85 suburbs with registered dogs. And so when we broke up these registered dogs, we saw that there was almost an equal ratio of males and females, and a good majority of them were already desexed. And we got about 37,000 dogs registered for this year, which is about 20 dogs per 100 people. A lot of the types of dogs were classified as pets, but there were also some groups of working and therapy dogs. I also wanted to show the top 20 registered dogs by breed, which this is what the owner labels on the application form as the primary breed. There is a section to have a secondary breed in it, but a lot of those were left blank, and the owners just kind of picked either a full breed or a cross. So it is up to the owner's interpretation, as breed identification is difficult, but I feel like it still gives a good look at what kind of dogs are in Townsville. So then we wanted to look at, there's a little zoomed in map of the most affected suburbs who have the most registered dogs. We see some of the top ones like Kerwin and Kelso, Mount Louisa. And sorry if I pronounce any of these suburbs wrong. I'm not Australian, as you might have noticed, so it's pretty hard to mimic you guys. We also wanted to look at the number of registered dogs, and we put it against the population of people in those suburbs. And as we can see then from there, the exposure rate for the number of dogs per 100 people. And a lot of our top suburbs with highest registered number of dogs didn't even make the list for exposure. We see Burdell had about 50 people, or 50 dogs per 100 people. And we also can kind of find an explanation for some of these suburbs, as they are a little more rural. And as we saw from the Queensland survey, that more rural you are, the more likely you are to have a dog. And then we wanted to look at all the incidences for those 2 years, and we found 924 total cases in the 2 years. And breaking those down, a lot of them were animal-on-animal attacks, but there were 330 that included a human that we also wanted to look at. And when we broke it down by year, we saw that there was a similar amount of cases for last year and this year, and it came out to be about 6 attacks per 10,000 people for a year. And then again, we broke the suburbs with the highest incidences, and again, Kelso, Curran, Mount Low were all kind of high contenders. And then we wanted to look at them by 1,000 people in the population. We saw Oak Valley had the highest with 12 incidences per 1,000 people. And some of our top suburbs, such as Kelso, got knocked down to like 41st place. So there's a big shift in the exposure versus the actual number of incidences. And when the incidences are reported, they make a note of how many dogs were actually involved in the incident. And so we can see it broken down if there was 1, 2, or 3 dogs that were reported. And we see a lot of the cases just had 1 dog in the case. And there was a separate question that asked if there was 3 or more dogs reported, but there was only 1 case that said that this was true. And then we wanted to combine all those dogs in the incidences, and we wanted to see the top breeds for incidences. And again, I brought that list of the top 10 breeds by number of registered, so we can kind of compare. But again, the breed is based on the reporter's interpretation to some extent, as identification could be a limitation. And then the next few slides, we are going to look at some incident characteristics. For the time of day, we had it for our data set broken down into AM or PM. And we saw that in the afternoon, there is more likely to be dog attacks, which we can somewhat hypothesize that maybe that's when people get off work and that's when they want to take the dogs for a walk or go to the dog park, but it is pretty close there. And then we also looked at the months reported, and this is when They are actually reported and put into the system, not necessarily the month that the attack took place. So it's not a direct representation, but it is very close, and we can kind of see if there was any significant months that stood out for us. And we saw that in May, there was more animal attacks, and there's a small jump in human attacks in April. But we would like to, with more information, even break this down further into, days of the week, if there's more attacks on weekends versus weekdays. And then we also looked at places of occurrence, and which stands out for us is how the humans, there was more attacks in public areas, which that could also be broken down into more specific details, but we don't have that in the data. And then we saw for animals, there's more likely to have an attack on private property. There was also questions asking, was the attacking dog known to the victim? And for humans, it was about 50-50. Half of them knew the dog, and half of it didn't. But the overall majority said no, they did not know the dog. And there was a question asking, was the attacking dog under effective control? Which the majority, not very significantly, said no, but this also can be argued that most attacks happen because there was some sort of break in the control, and so it is also open to interpretation by the reporter, because the population could have a different definition of what they think effective control is, and which could be different from the actual definition that the Townsville Council sets up as having a dog under effective control. We also broke down the attack on other animals, as we assumed most dog attacks were on other dogs, followed by cats, and there were a few guinea pigs that were mistaken for chew toys, I think. But yeah, mainly dog-on-dog attacks. And then we wanted to get a quick glimpse on the injured person characteristics. We saw that adults were more likely to be attacked. On the reporting form, it did include gender, but we did not get that in the data set as well. So it would be something to follow up with and get a better understanding of the overall characteristics of those injured. We did see a lot of people did not even need treatment, which is a positive note, but there was 48 who did have to go to the hospital. And for the nature of injury, there were 64 that had no contact and 87 that did have puncture wounds. So like I said, this is just a first glimpse into this kind of data, and with only 2 years to go off of, and it's kind of missing data, it's kind of hard to see an overall picture. And then finally, we want to look at the attacking dog. Oh wait, we wanted to look at the attacking dog other than looking at just the breed. Wait, I did skip one. And we saw that males were more likely to be involved in an incident, which kind of coincides with a lot of other studies that are out there. Same with having the dog desexed would decrease the amount of incidences. Positive note, there were a lot that were registered, so we could keep track of all those. There were 19 that were prior to the incident declared dangerous, so there were a few that had a relapse, and 31 were considered hunting animals. And looking at the results of the incident, we saw that 27 were then considered menacing, 90 were then considered dangerous, and ultimately 67 were destroyed. The majority of these did not need any further action, as some reasons being there wasn't enough evidence or they were not able to follow through. And finally, 17 were involved in previous incidences. So hopefully this project can add to existing and ongoing research on dog attacks and dog populations. Results from this project will also hopefully not only benefit Townsville City Council by analyzing their own collected data, but will also add to the researching the effectiveness of this type of recording process. And hopefully in the future, we can find a nice collaboration between all these systems in order to get the clearest picture we can and hopefully put some prevention strategies in place to decrease the incidences. And as we know, with prevention, it is key to understand and identify evidence-based strategies, and that can be useful, and also that are able to be put into public use and will most likely be uptaken by the public. There also needs to be continued encourage responsible dog ownership, which I feel Townsville City Council has done a great job to encourage this, especially on their website. They have heaps of links for dog facts on, leash laws, and they also have a new campaign about aggressive dogs and a lot of information on the issue of wandering dogs, which cause a lot of incidences that we recorded. And also looking through all the registration details, I noticed a lot of very popular names that were coming up, and so if you were worried about maybe what to name your dog or want to know the #1 dog name in Townsville, we found out it's Bella. And we found some most creative ones I just wanted to point out and give them some credit because I think Captain Rainbow Sparkles is a pretty nice dog name. I think it was for a poodle as well, so kind of add to it. So if there's any questions, I'm not an expert in all this field, but I will try to answer them the best I can. And I just want to thank you for your attention during this time and allowing me to present today. This is a first experience for me, and I would like to represent JCU and Townsville City Council a little bit the proper way. And so, again, thank you for the opportunity, and I will be around later if you have questions. So that's it.